Yes, we have 10 chancellors. We have approximately 200 SMG members. All of them are required to report their activity, both compensated and uncompensated. The university posts on its public website all of the compensated activity for all SMG members each year. So it is publicly available to everyone. In 2015, which is the last full year of reporting, we had 3 chancellors who reported outside compensated activity out of the 10.
And what were they earning?
Nicholas Dirks earned $4,000 for his service on the Tanner Foundation board. Chancellor Katehi had the John Wiley, which has been widely reported. That was $29,800 in cash compensation and just a little less than $200,000 in deferred compensation. And then Chancellor Khosla reported activity for the Infosys Foundation Jury of Engineering, $12,000, and HCL, Infosystems, for $12,000.
Okay, so this is just kind of a fluke more than anything. So, okay, because I would say, boy, we allow it, but maybe reduce the overall salary and tell our chancellors to go have a ball. But anyway, just a different perspective. Thank you, panel. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Senator Morlock. Senator Nielsen.
Were this a fluke, I think we could say, okay. Ms. Reith was fairly specific in talking about where CSU is, and this list of things that you talked about, revising for stronger monitoring, these are things that you had in place before this kind of brouhaha surfaced, is that correct?
Correct.
And then you're reporting at each campus, steps to be taken, disclosure, you talked about that. A checklist for outside employment, that's some kind of a checklist. So you are informing the presidents, this is what we expect, that this is okay and that this is not okay, so they're clearly informed in advance. Is that what you're talking about?
I think the checklist is designed to help educate people about what we mean by outside employment.
Yes, yes.
Because people think if it's not a traditional 9-to-5 job, you know, even giving a speech and receiving payment, that's something that we would want to be reported.
And then you had, I heard you say 17 disclosure categories and training. Those were of the many things you stated, right?
Correct.
And then, Mr. Larson, your presentation was not nearly as specific. It was much more vague, and seemed like that the president would make determinations, and it seems like it would be more prone to things that like have just happened. Are there really clearly spelled out documents and policies that you know, the public would be able to review?
Yes.
Similar to what Ms. Reith is telling us about CSU.
Sorry, yes, Senator, there's a 12-page policy that's posted online. It's publicly available. At the end of each calendar year, we mail out materials, both for collection and reminding each of the SMG members of their obligations under the policy to report out any of the activity that they anticipate in the upcoming year. So we collect that every year. It's a detailed form. We ask for certification that it's complete and accurate. All the details are provided in terms of the organization that they're proposing participation in, the type of activity, whether it's paid or unpaid, whether it's a for-profit or non-profit entity, how much time they anticipate spending on the activity, how much time during normal business hours, how much time outside normal business hours, the level of compensation, the type of compensation, including direct cash, deferred compensation, stock options, other equity vehicles. There is a lot of information that's collected on this, and a lot of detail reported out as well.
Over the years, I've been able to know a lot of the chancellors, including the legendary Emil Mrak. How would you argue to the public that it makes good sense for our chancellors or presidents to be serving on corporate boards for compensation? They have many duties. They are very hardworking people with tremendous pressures. How would you argue that it enhances the mission of UC to have our presidents devote, even if it's their personal time, to these endeavors, serving on corporate boards?
I think the exposure is probably one of the main benefits, and it comes from both sides. Exposure of the chancellors to business practices, to risk assessments, to efficiency reviews. These are things that they can take back to their organization to hopefully benefit the organization. On the other side, there is an opportunity for business leaders to interact with our university leaders who do have international reputations, and they get some benefit out of that as well. I think the other part that is beneficial to the university is that there are relationships that are formed here. Sometimes they result in philanthropy and other types of beneficial relationships to the university and its students. So I do see the benefit to it. We have seen it across the board. It's unfortunate when these situations arise that call attention to the negative aspects. But this is it's a competitive practice with other universities. It does have benefits that accrue to the university, but it does require oversight because of the element of judgment.
Surely, and obviously you'll be doing things to improve here. I would only note, if not in reality and perception, there's a cloud here when, if that be the noble mission of relationships and building confidence such that results in benefits to the university, if our chancellors or presidents are getting paid, that could look a little suspect. In a perception, okay? I'm not saying I'm not being accusatory, but in the perception of the public, that could, well, gee, do they have to get paid for that? Can't they just on their own moral suasion and on the reputation of the university achieve that by just volunteering or doing something like that? You know, that is of some concern. And I have to say this now, I am moved because of my many years serving in the budget and dealing with the universities and CSU's budgets. I've not always found the best of business practices in higher education. And were they serving on corporate boards and learning good business practices and taking those back to the universities and applying them, then you're going to get me very excited. But I can't say that I've always seen the best of business practices applied within our universities. And we have wonderful, wonderful professors in departments of business in our universities. I'm going to have the pleasure of speaking at a graduation shortly at one of the finest that I represent. But in dealing in the internecine world of the budget, I think there's lots of room for improvement. And I've asked many of our presidents, and we've come to visit each year, what are you doing to make your system more efficient? Usually they come and just say, give us more money. And, you know, that kind of rings on deaf ears. So my point is, if we're going to do these things and serve on corporate boards, then let's learn something from it and bring something substantive that we have learned on the corporate boards back to the budget committee and say, hey, these things we found out, these things we are applying. That is my point.
Okay, thank you, Senator Nielsen. And Senator Allen, anything else to add? Senator Morlock.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just one quick question. Mr. Larson and Ms. Reith, have you done any analysis of industry standards? Because there's a lot of private colleges that allow their chancellors to participate. Have you just done a survey of what's happening out there?
We have. We did a brief summary survey of AEU institutions, both public and private. And it is a competitive practice among those that responded. I think we had about a dozen organizations respond, a mix of publics and privates. And that was the reference that I made earlier in my speaking notes, that none prohibited the activity of those 12, none prohibited the activity, none prohibited the receipt of money.
At this dinner I went to, one of the recipients was Janet Kerr, Vice Chancellor, Pepperdine University. Board service includes Appfolio, Inc., Fidelity National Financial, Inc., Lazy Boy Incorporated, Tilly's, Inc. And It seemed like all of those corporations bought tables, which were not cheap, and she had a lot of students as well that were there and cheered her on. So I just, from one perspective to another, I didn't see anyone react negatively to the fact that, this professor was involved. So I think in all things balance, and thank you for your presentation and thank you for your time.
Yeah, I think one question that it raised, and probably we should all have been aware of the volume of UC executives who do have board memberships and are getting compensated, particularly by private boards. And it's our fault we didn't, because the information is public and out there. But we have to, we've seen several times over the course of the last few years in the CSU, bills to limit executive compensation. And when we do the budget for the UC, part of, we know what we're budgeting partly is compensation for executives. And if we see that an executive is making a good percentage of what they're being paid by public dollars privately, there might be an interest in budgeting less money for the public dollars. And that's, I think, the difference with Pepperdine. We're talking about the taxpayers' money here. And when the taxpayer sees that someone that the taxpayer is paying $500,000 a year or $400,000 a year is making another $100,000 to help some private corporation, the taxpayer, who probably has less means, is probably going to react to that. So partly we're the guardians of taxpayer money. I think your systems are very appropriate, and I'm glad to see that, but I think it is good for us now to be aware as a committee of what is happening out in the field. So thank you for that. If there are no other questions from the board, I would like to thank and excuse this panel and invite up our next panel, which is the budget overview for the University of California. And we have with us Maritza Orquiza, Jason Constantouris, and Karen Flaherty. Maritza is from the Department of Finance, Jason from the LAO, and Karen from the University of California. We'll begin with Ms. Orquiza.
Maritza Urquiza, Department of Finance. Consistent with the administration's multi-year funding plan for the UC, the governor's budget includes an increase of $125 million general fund for a total appropriation of $3.3 billion general fund for the UC. As part of the agreement that the governor and the UC president announced last year, the UC agreed to a series of reforms and initiatives related to community college transfer, time to degree, use of technology and data, and long-term liabilities. We have been monitoring progress against the agreed upon timelines, and to date, the UC has been on track on implementing these reforms and initiatives. The administration will continue to follow these efforts. The 2015 Budget Act included $96 million Proposition 2 funds on a one-time basis to help pay down the unfunded liability of the UC retirement plan. This is the first of 3 payments totaling $436 million in one-time Proposition 2 funds for the UC. The release of the funds is contingent upon the UC region's adoption of a new pension plan that limits pensionable earnings consistent with those of PEPRA. And in March, the regions adopted a pension plan consistent with that expectation. The governor's budget includes $171 million Proposition 2 funds, representing the second installment of that plan. Additionally, the governor's budget includes $35 million general fund on a one-time basis for deferred maintenance and $25 million in cap and trade funds on a one-time basis for energy projects. And finally, the governor's budget assumes that the UC will meet the enrollment expectation set forth in the 2015 Budget Act of enrolling an additional 5,000 undergraduate resident students compared to the 14-15 enrollment levels. Therefore, the governor's budget includes an augmentation of $25 million beginning in the current year. We've been working with the UC to better understand how they plan to meet the enrollment expectation, and we can provide confirmation to you about that evidence at the May revision. With that, I'm happy to answer any questions.
Great, thank you, Ms. Urquiza. Move now to Jason Constantouros from LEO.
Jason Constantouros, LEO. A few months ago, we presented to this committee an overview of UC's budget. I just wanted to touch on some of the things we said in that hearing again. The first is that we continue to disagree with the governor's overall budgeting approach for the universities. The budget process is really one of the ways the legislature sets priorities for UC. And so we recommend that the legislature review UC's expenditure plan under the governor's proposal, and to the extent that its priorities differ than UC's priorities, it set priorities in the budget. And specifically, we think that UC could provide the legislature some additional detail on a line item pertaining to academic quality initiatives. We thought there was some lacking detail there. We also recommend that the legislature start thinking about 2017-18 in terms of what it would like to do for enrollment growth. The legislature last year set a budget year +1 expectation for UC for 2016-17. So this budget year, we already have an enrollment target in place. And we think setting a budget year +1 target better aligns state budgeting with UC's admissions policies. And then finally, we also recommended that the legislature work with both UC and CSU to develop a maintenance earmark to better improve maintenance practices at the segments, and that we also develop a long-term plan to pay down both segments' deferred maintenance backlogs. That's our presentation. I'd be happy to answer any questions during the Q&A session.
Thank you, Mr. Constantouros. Moving now to Kieran Flaherty from the UC.
Good afternoon, Chairman Block and members of the committee. Thank you very much for inviting me to be here today. My name is Kieran Flaherty. I'm the Deputy to the Chief Financial Officer. I do state budget relations in the UC Office of the President. So I would just briefly like to start today with a little bit of a refresher on the 16-17 budget. You might recall from the last time that we met that we consider the governor's proposal for UC to be very good, and we appreciate the way that Ms. Urquiza has outlined it. So I won't spend too much time going back to what was covered in the prior hearing, but I would invite you to, and my colleagues here, sorry about that. If you look at the second page of the handout that the sergeant just distributed, you'll see a brief summary of the governor's proposal, including from state general funds, the 4% base budget adjustment, the $35 million, one-time funds also from state general fund. There's also in the proposal $25 million from cap and trade resources to be expended on energy efficiency. This is an appropriation that was originally in the governor's May revise of 2015, but was not finally acted on by the legislature, and therefore it's being proposed in 16-17 instead. And then there is, of course, the Proposition 2 funds that Ms. Urquiza outlined. If you look then at the second page, well, let me just back up and say that that is the budget that we feel is very good, and we respectfully request your support for it. We think it's a very good start for the university and are grateful to the administration and the Department of Finance for that proposal. So we do assume those revenues in our budget moving forward. There are a few areas where we would really like to partner with the state to achieve some additional goals. First and foremost would be the area of enrollment growth for graduate students. That is a very high priority for the university, but let me just quickly give you a brief update on the other two items as well. The university did request additional funding for a program that's currently funded out of the public transportation account. This is a $9 million augmentation for the Institutes of Transportation Studies. It's at the bottom of page 3. The ITS is a team of UC researchers across the system from over 30 disciplines that advances state-of-the-art research in transportation, engineering, and planning, as well as serve as a resource for state and local agencies. and helping to meet the California workforce needs as well through those programs. So we really think that there's an opportunity here. However, that is being dealt with in a different committee that was in the Senate subcommittee number 2. The item was held open, and there seems to be a desire to also address in the Assembly counterpart on the other side. So moving on then to the cap and trade. The university does have a proposal for additional cap and trade funding up to $69.1 million in one-time funds, also payable from cap and trade. What we're looking to do is seek to partner with the state in any way that we can aggressively reduce greenhouse gases, and we're very grateful for the governor's support. We do have our own program at the university to become carbon neutral by 2025. But specifically, if we can identify equity funding, there's a core group of projects ranging from a biogas facility to installation of solar panels and, of course, additional energy efficiency in buildings that we would be able to make very good use of state funding and match with our own funding to dedicate to those projects. So. Also, before we jump too far ahead into the undergraduate and to the graduate enrollment, I would like to follow up a little bit and provide you an update on enrollment, undergraduate enrollment. As I mentioned before, we do have the $6 million request for graduate student funding for 600 graduate students, but you'll recall that the Budget Act of 2015 provides an augmentation to the university of $25 million. If we are to demonstrate to the Department of Finance by May 1st that we will be enrolling 5,000 more undergraduate resident students than we did in 14-15. So I'm pleased to report that I think I can say with confidence that we are on track for that goal. If you look at page 4 of your handout, this is actually a slide that the Legislative Analyst's Office prepared, and instead of recreating the wheel, I cut and pasted in because it accurately describes what the general plan is for the enrollment growth. The Berkeley, Los Angeles, Riverside, and San Diego campuses will be enrolling the largest number of new fall freshmen and transfers, and the other campuses are also enrolling meaningful amounts of new students. The 4 campuses that will be enrolling 750 students each, new students each, comprise about 43% of the total of that 5,000. So we're in the process of providing the required information to the Department of Finance, and as I mentioned, I feel confident that what we can do is look at the admissions data that we recently have gathered with respect to freshmen. Transfer data is not quite come in yet. That's a little bit later in the process. And my colleague from undergraduate admissions is serving on the next panel, and he's able to respond to some of the specific questions if you have some about where we stand with enrollment. But I'd like to just highlight a few things. What we do is we look at the admissions data, and then we can compare it to historical trends to set an enrollment target that will exceed the 5,000 requirement, building in a little bit of a cushion there. And then we also have a great degree of confidence, because if we were for some unforeseen reason to have estimated incorrectly and fall short, we can also require campuses to enroll more students during the school year in the winter and spring semester or quarters, depending on the campus. So we're feeling pretty good about where things stand with there. What students we will be enrolling, I'd like to highlight a bit about that, who we are admitting. If you turn now to page 5, this is a chart that's probably familiar to many of you. It's a chart of our low-income, first-generation, and underrepresented minority enrollment over time. The purpose of this chart is to demonstrate that the university has made progress across all of those categories as measured by Pell Grant recipient or first-generation undergraduates or underrepresented minority undergraduate enrollment. So as you can see, the trend is moving in the correct direction. This is headcount for fall 2015 comparing year to year. Our preliminary admissions data for 2016 demonstrates that this trend is going to continue. The data is very preliminary as far as admissions goes. It doesn't yet include the transfers, as I mentioned, but it does show an increase in the number of admitted California students who are low-income, first-generation, and underrepresented minority. So on page 6, we provide some more detailed preliminary data for freshman admissions for 2014, 2015, and 2016 in the 3 tables. So if you look, again, this is admissions rather than enrollment. The last chart was enrollment, but this is admissions data compared across the 3 years. So if you look at the top table, which is a breakdown of admissions by residency, you'll see in the left-hand side that the number of admissions for 2016 for California students is over 66,000. That's a substantial increase over the 2014 and 2015 numbers. So on the far right column there in that top table for California, you'll see that that's a 14.7% increase in admissions over the prior year. Just below in the admissions rate table, this is one that folks frequently look to, and that is often covered in the media, so I'd like to spend just a bit of time there. The admissions rate of 62.7%. So if you look at the table again on the California line, 2014, 2015, and in 2016, it shows the admissions rate based on the amount of applications, 105,000, and the amount of admissions, 66,000. The admissions rate is 62.7%. However, Mr. Handel informed me today, our undergraduate admissions guru, informed me today that he was looking at the most recent numbers and that it appears that the admissions rate is in flux, but right about 64%. So that's positive. I'd also like to point out that Table 3 right below has information related to race and ethnicity. And so the chart shows that there's been some significant progress that's been made with respect to some of the groups. If you look at the Chicano Latino item, which is the fourth one down in the left-hand column, over time you will see that there has been improvement in the percentage of the total of the undergraduate population. There are other areas where certainly we need to be making more progress, and so we're aware of that, and we're working on it, and appreciate all of your help and support in doing so. The university, something that's not exactly reflected on the table here or evident, but for instance, the university is currently admitting about half of all African Americans who apply to the university and about 60% of our Latino students who applied, and that's for the fall term of 2016. So not reflected here, but again, in keeping with the trend on the prior page, the admission of first generation and low income students is also going to increase for fall of 2016. First generation college students now stand at 43% of all admissions. So admitted students from low income backgrounds, generally we define that as Pell Grant eligible, constitute about 38% of all admits, and that 38% is up a couple percentage points from last year. So that is a snapshot of where things stand for the 16-17 academic year. And as we discussed in prior hearings, the $25 million for enrollment growth represents an amount that is half of what UC in the state have typically relied upon in recent years for supporting enrollment growth, but the university at the legislature's request is phasing out a program of financial aid that was dedicated for non-resident students, and we're using that savings to help provide support for enrolling those additional students so that we can ensure that those new students that are coming in are able to avail themselves of just a high quality education as prior generations did. So as was touched on by the Legislative Analyst's Office, we of course would like to sustain expanded access to the university in future years, not just the 5,000 in 16-17, but we would have a goal of growing 10,000 students overall, so an additional 5,000 students in the next following 2 years, and we very much would appreciate support for that. But our ask for this year, we're busy with the 5,000 students this year, and this brings us to the issue of graduate student enrollment. So we think it's very important to acknowledge the starting point with respect to graduate student enrollment. As you know, UC serves as the state agency for academic research, and our mission is to provide undergraduate, graduate, and professional education. So we're given exclusive jurisdiction with limited exception for doctoral degrees and for instruction in law, medicine, dentistry, veterinary medicine. And so when we grow undergraduates, typically we look to add ladder rank faculty who carry out the research, education, public service mission of the university. And so our graduate student enrollment is currently about 52,000 students overall, out of a total of about 252,000 students. I'm rounding here. So growing graduate student enrollment is really necessary to try and maintain what is currently a ratio of about 20% of our overall student population being comprised of doctoral, professional, and then graduate academic master's students. So our faculty are not only supported by graduate students in the way that graduate students serve as teaching assistants and in instructional capacity, but are also supported through graduate student research. And graduate students play a very, very important component in developing an ecosystem at a public research university that's really important to the overall experience of our undergraduate students as well. And then here's something that is often overlooked, I think. Graduate students play a very crucial role as faculty at CSU, at UC, and at the community colleges. Both UC and CSU depend very heavily on the graduates of our PhD programs. About 1/4 of UC and CSU's tenure track faculty members achieved a doctoral degree from UC. So as we continue to expand access to education, I think it's important to note that we're going to need teachers, well-qualified teachers, to fill that role. So given what's been said already and the time, I think I'll stop there and just respond to any questions that you might have.
Okay, thank you very much. Before we get to questions, if any, for this panel, we did have one item we voted on at the very beginning, item number 1, and Senator Allen had stepped briefly out of the room, so we're going to open the call and ask staff to call the roll of those who have not voted.
Senator Allen.
Aye. Okay, with that, show that item passing 3-0, and we'll now close the roll on the item. Move now to questions for this panel, if there are any. Senator Morla.
Just a couple quick questions, Mr. Chair. Maybe I really have it for Mr. Flaherty. I've got actually about 80 questions. No,
He'll visit your office to deal with those.
but I'll summarize it to one. In the materials provided, again, I don't want to belabor the point, but I didn't see a budget, so I'm kind of a wonk, right? So do you have a link?
We do indeed, and we just completed our hard copy of the 2016-17 operating budget. So I will happily deliver one of these, so you also have a hard copy. It is available online, and the best way to reach it online, I have it bookmarked, so I don't actually know the URL.
Then I can bring my laptop to these meetings as well,
Sure.
because the time is so darn limited. So maybe just, it'd be nice, maybe, Mr. Chair, to staff reports, I can bring my laptop and go to links and have some fun while the speakers are talking.
The fast way to get to it, Senator, if I may, is ucop.edu. And then if you just put do a search in the top right corner on operating budget, or you can do /operating budget.
Great. Thank you.
And then it lists all the operating budgets from all the past years that are posted there and all the legislative reports that the university submits as well.
That's what I'm looking for. Thanks. The $6 million to support UC labor centers. Does the UC system already have free market centers?
The university does have business schools. That's true, and we do have 2 labor centers, one at UCLA and one at UC Berkeley.
Okay, so there's balance theoretically.
Well, I would say that some of the there are more business schools than there are labor centers within the university system.
And then the implementation of the new pension program, are you going to be providing reports in the next year or two on how that's being implemented? And
Certainly, we can absolutely provide reports on how it's being implemented, and I'd be happy to have some of our folks who work in retirements and benefits directly come and meet with you or other committee members that are interested. We work closely with a consultant who's helped develop all the cost estimates for the implementation of the 2016 tier, which goes into effect on July 1st. And certainly our program design, we have folks in retirement and benefits that would be able to respond. I do have a fact sheet here that sort of goes into plan design. If you'd like, I can provide that now. It has a URL at the bottom where additional information is available. If I could just provide, thank you.
thank you. Thank you, Mr. Flaherty. Thank you, panel. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm going to go grab my laptop.
Thank you, Senator.